The alarm systems on the horizon's edge started screaming at exactly 400 hours. Captain was in his quarters when it happened, reviewing supply reports and thinking about how boring space exploration had become. 3 months of scanning rocks near Jupiter, and the most exciting thing they had found was a slightly unusual ice formation. He was starting to wonder if humanity would ever find anything interesting out here. That thought died the moment he reached the bridge. "Sir, you need to see this," his first officer said, her voice tight with something between fear and excitement. Looked at the main screen and felt his breath catch. Something was appearing in front of them. Not approaching, appearing. Space itself seemed to fold and twist, and then there it was. A ship. No, calling it a ship was like calling the sun a. The thing was massive, easily 20 times larger than any vessel humanity had ever built. Its surface was smooth and dark, covered in patterns that seemed to shift and move in the starlight. "Are we getting anything on communications?" asked, surprised at how calm his voice sounded. "Yes, sir. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies. The computer is translating now." A moment later, a voice filled the bridge. It was strange, clicking and humming in ways that human vocal cords could never manage, but the translation software turned it into flat, emotionless words. "Human vessel, you will power down your weapons and prepare to receive our representatives. Resistance will be met with appropriate response." Looked at his weapons officer and raised an eyebrow. "Do we have our weapons powered up?" "No, sir. Standard passive scans only." "Then I guess they really want to make sure we understand who's in charge here." Straightened his uniform. "Send a response. Tell them we'll receive their representatives peacefully, and get me a direct line to Earth. They're going to want to know about this." Within 6 hours, 3 people had been transported from Earth to the horizon's edge, and from there to the alien vessel. Ambassador Park had been in a meeting with the Terran Coalition when the call came. She had exactly 20 minutes to prepare before being rushed to a military transport. Now she stood in what could only be described as a throne room, with Colonel on her left and Doctor on her right. The room was huge. The ceiling stretched up so high they couldn't see the top in the dim lighting. In front of them, arranged in a semicircle, were 12 platforms. On each platform sat a being that was very clearly not human. Had seen pictures and videos of what aliens might look like. She had read countless science fiction books and watched hundreds of movies. None of it had prepared her for the reality. Some of the beings looked almost familiar, with recognizable features like eyes and mouths. Others were so strange that her brain struggled to process what she was seeing. The largest of them, sitting in the center, stood up. It looked like a praying mantis that someone had stretched to be 3 meters tall. Its head was triangular, with multiple eyes that glittered in the light. When it spoke, its mouth didn't move, but the translation came through clearly. "Humans, you stand before the Galactic Council. We are the governing body of civilized space. 12 species, representing thousands of worlds, united in peace and cooperation for over 50,000 of your years." Felt shift beside her. She knew what he was thinking because she was thinking it too. 50,000 years. Humanity had only figured out agriculture 10,000 years ago. "We have observed your species," the being continued. "You have achieved basic. You have established primitive colonies within your own system. You have developed weapons of significant destructive power. All of this marks you as a species that has reached the threshold of galactic awareness." The being's head tilted in what might have been the alien equivalent of looking down at something small and insignificant. "However, you are young, dangerously young. Your weapons are crude but effective. Your expansion is rapid but careless. Your society is unified but unstable. Left to your own devices, you will either destroy yourselves or become a threat to the peaceful order we have maintained." Another being spoke up, this one covered in what looked like blue fur with 6 arms. "Therefore, the Council has decided to extend protection to your species. You will cease all military development. You will submit your government to council oversight. You will accept our guidance in all matters of technology and expansion. You will become a protectorate of the council. The mantis being spoke again. You have 30 days to accept these terms. After that, we will take necessary action to ensure compliance. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of reality. You are not the first species we have brought into the galactic community, and you will not be the last. All have accepted in time. You will too. It was at this point that Park, Earth's top diplomat, trained in staying calm under any circumstance, started to laugh. It started as a small sound, almost like a cough. She tried to stop it. She really did. But then the mantis being started listing humanity's primitive weapons and their fragile biology and their single-system existence, and the absurdity of it all hit her like a physical force. She laughed, not politely, not quietly. She laughed the way someone laughs when they hear something so ridiculous that they can't believe it's real. Beside her, Colonel made a sound that might have been a cough but was definitely also a laugh. He turned it into a series of coughs, his shoulders shaking. Doctor covered her mouth with both hands, but could see her eyes watering with suppressed laughter. The council chamber went silent. All 12 beings stared at the humans, the mantis being leaned forward. You laugh, you find this amusing. Got herself under control, wiping her eyes. I apologize, that was unprofessional. Please continue. There is nothing more to say. You have 30 days, dismissed. The 3 humans found themselves back on the horizon's edge a few minutes later. Captain looked at them with obvious concern. How did it go? Looked at and then back at. We need to get back to Earth, immediately, and someone needs to call President. We have a problem. What kind of problem? The kind where the people who think they're in charge have absolutely no idea what they're dealing with. Moved toward the communication station. The kind where we might have just laughed in the face of a galactic government that's been around for 50,000 years. Is that bad? Asked. Smiled, but there was no humor in it. That depends entirely on what happens in the next 30 days. The Terran Coalition emergency session began at dawn. President Sung sat at the head of a table surrounded by humanity's best end. Admiral Lee had flown in from the Mars Defense Station. His tactical officer, Sora Bay, had brought 3 portable computers filled with analysis. Intelligence Chief had barely slept in the 2 days since first contact, and it showed in the dark circles under his eyes. Ambassador stood at the front of the room, her presentation displayed on the wall behind her. She had stopped finding the situation funny. They gave us 30 days, she said. 30 days to surrender our sovereignty, dismantle our military, and accept their rule. They called it protection. They made it very clear this wasn't a request. What did they show us about their capabilities? Admiral asked. That's the interesting part, Colonel said, standing up to take over the presentation. We got detailed scans of their ship while we were aboard. Doctor and I spent the last 48 hours analyzing everything. The results are unexpected. The screen changed to show technical readouts. Sora leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she read the data. Their shields, continued, operate on a rotating frequency modulation system. We used the same technology 70 years ago before we figured out layered field generation. Their plasma weapons are impressive to look at, but their energy inefficient. Are hit harder and use a fraction of the power. Spoke up, what about their FTL drives? How fast can they move? Doctor pulled up another chart. Based on their entry signature and the residual energy patterns, we estimate they can travel at approximately 8 times light speed. Our experimental drives, the ones we're testing right now, are rated for 12 times light speed. The room went quiet. President leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled under his chin. Are you telling me that this 50,000-year-old galactic civilization is less advanced than we are? In many ways, yes, said. Not all ways. Their materials science is incredible. Their energy generation is far more efficient than ours, but in terms of weapons, defense, and speed, we're ahead, significantly ahead. How is that possible? Sora asked. They've had 50,000 years. That's what I wanted to talk about, a new voice said. Doctor, entered the room carrying a tablet. I've been studying the cultural data we gathered from the Council's broadcasts. I think I know why they're behind us. She pulled up images of the Council species' home worlds. Beautiful planets with blue skies, calm oceans, and lush vegetation. No ice caps, no deserts, no extreme weather patterns visible from orbit. Look at these worlds, said. Perfect, absolutely perfect. Stable climates, abundant resources, no natural predators at the top of the food chain. These species evolved in paradise. So asked. So they never had to struggle, not really. Pulled up Earth's image next to them. The contrast was stark. Ice caps, deserts, massive storm systems, volcanic activity. Earth has tried to kill us repeatedly. Ice ages that lasted thousands of years. Supervolcanoes, asteroid impacts, plagues that wiped out half our population. We've nearly gone extinct dozens of times just in the last million years. She advanced to the next slide. And that's just natural disasters. We also had to deal with each other, the Council species. They unified naturally, peacefully. They didn't have major wars because they didn't develop the mentality for it. They're prey species that became intelligent, not predator species. But humans, Admiral said slowly, we're predators. We're persistence hunters, confirmed. We're designed to chase prey until it collapses from exhaustion. We can eat almost anything. We can survive in any climate from Arctic to desert. We can heal from injuries that would kill most species. And we breed fast, really fast compared to the Council species. President stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. So when they look at us, they see a dangerous species that needs to be controlled. Yes, said, but when we look at them, we see innocence, finished. They've never faced a real threat. They've been the apex species on their worlds for millions of years. They have no concept of what real war looks like. They probably think their plasma weapons are devastating because they've never seen what humans can do when we're truly threatened. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Finally, Sora spoke up. So what do we do? If we show them what we're really capable of, we'll terrify them. But if we submit, we doom our future. President turned back to face the room. We need more information. I want full analysis of the Council's military capabilities based on the scan data. Sora, work with the space defense teams. Figure out what we could do if this turns into a fight. Prepare defensive positions around Earth and Mars, but keep them hidden. Make it look like we're complying. And what about the diplomatic response? Asked. President smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. We're going to do something the Council has apparently never experienced. We're going to say no. 3 weeks later, met privately with President in his office. She had spent the time reviewing every piece of data they had on the Council, and her conclusions were troubling. They're not evil, she said. That's what makes this hard. If they were conquerors or tyrants, this would be simple. But they genuinely believe they're helping us. They think we're dangerous children who need guidance. Are they wrong? Asked. Thought about that. 100 years ago. No, they would have been right. We almost destroyed ourselves in the resource wars. Nuclear weapons were minutes from being launched. We came so close to ending everything. But we didn't. No, we learned, we unified. We looked at what we'd almost done and decided to be better. But we didn't forget the lessons. We kept the weapons. We kept the defenses. We prepared for threats because we know they exist. The Council doesn't understand that, said. They've never had to make that choice. No, and if we let them take control, they'll weaken us. They'll make us vulnerable. And when something really dangerous shows up, didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. President stood and walked to his wall, where a picture hung showing Earth from space. the beautiful blue marble that had tried so hard to kill humanity and had instead made them stronger. "We'll decline their offer," he said finally, politely, diplomatically, but firmly, "and then we'll show them exactly what they're dealing with. They won't like it." "No," agreed, "but they need to understand. The galaxy isn't as safe as they think it is. They've been lucky. That luck won't last forever, and when it runs out, they'll need allies who know how to fight." "You think we can teach them?" "I think we have to try, because the alternative is watching them get destroyed by something worse than us." He turned back to face. "Prepare the response, and tell Admiral to get ready for the demonstration. If the Council wants to see what humanity is capable of, we'll show them." "Just the defensive capabilities?" President smiled. "Just the basics, no need to show them everything, not yet." The 30th day arrived with clear skies over Geneva, where the Terran Coalition had its headquarters. Ambassador Park stood in front of her mirror, adjusting her formal diplomatic uniform. In a few hours, she would return to the Council ship and deliver humanity's answer. She had rehearsed the words 100 times, but they still felt heavy on her tongue. Fleet Commander Nam waited for her in the transport bay, along with Engineer Ryu. Was a career military officer who had spent 20 years in space defense. Was young, barely 30, but she was the best weapons engineer humanity had ever produced. Both of them knew what was coming. "Ready?" asked as approached. "As ready as I'll ever be to tell a 50,000-year-old government that we're declining their generous offer to rule us." Laughed nervously. "When you put it that way, it sounds insane." "It is insane," said, "but it's also necessary." The council chamber looked exactly the same as it had 30 days ago. The 12 species sat on their platforms, looking down at the 3 humans. The mantis being, the speaker, stood as they entered. "Humans, you have returned. We assume you have come to formally accept our terms." Took a breath. "Thank you for your concern regarding humanity's development and our place in the galaxy. We appreciate that your offer comes from a place of genuine care for our. However, after careful consideration, humanity must respectfully decline." The silence that followed was absolute. None of the council members moved. They simply stared, as if had spoken in a language their translators couldn't process. Finally, the speaker spoke. "You decline." "Yes, we decline." "This is not possible," another council member said, the blue-furred one with 6 arms. "No species has ever declined council protection. It is for your own benefit." "We understand that you believe this," said carefully, "but humanity has chosen a different path. We wish to remain independent while pursuing peaceful relations with the council." The speaker's multiple eyes seemed to glow brighter. "You do not understand. This is not a choice. Your species is too dangerous to be left unguided. You have weapons capable of destroying your own world. You have aggressive expansion patterns. You have a history of violence. We cannot allow you to threaten the peace of the galaxy." "We have no intention of threatening anyone," Fleet Commander said. "We seek only to defend ourselves and pursue our own development." "Defense?" The speaker made a sound that the translator rendered as dismissive laughter. "You are a single system species with primitive weapons. What could you possibly need to defend against? We are the only other intelligence you have encountered." "For now," said quietly. The council members looked at each other. The speaker leaned forward on his platform. "You refuse our protection. Very well. Then we must ensure compliance through enforcement. Our fleet will enter your system within 5 days. You will submit, or you will be forced to submit. This conversation is over." "Before you make that decision," spoke up, her voice clear despite the obvious nervousness, "would the council be interested in understanding exactly what they would be enforcing against?" "We have scanned your capabilities," the speaker said. "Kinetic weapons, nuclear explosives, chemical propulsion, primitive shields, we are not impressed." Smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Those were the systems we let you scan. Would the council like to see what we actually use? This got their attention. The 12 council members huddled together, their various forms of communication creating a strange symphony of sounds. Finally, the speaker turned back. "Show us." 6 hours later, the council observation ship sat at a safe distance in the asteroid belt and stood on the observation deck with the full council. Through the transparent walls, they could see a section of the belt that humanity had cleared for the demonstration. "This is standard defensive equipment," explained. "The kind we use to protect our mining operations from asteroid strikes." He nodded to who activated the first system. In the distance, hundreds of small platforms appeared having. They looked simple, barely more than metal frames with attached weapons. Automated defense grid said, "Watch." Hundreds of asteroids, each about the size of a house, were released into the demonstration zone. The defense platforms opened fire. The sound didn't carry in space, but the visual was stunning. Streams of projectiles, moving at incredible speeds, began intercepting the asteroids, not one at a time, hundreds at once. Within 30 seconds, every asteroid had been reduced to gravel. The council members shifted uncomfortably. The blue-furred being spoke. "Impressive for civilian equipment, but plasma weapons could." "Let me show you point defense," interrupted. A human destroyer, the Sentinel, moved into view. It was small compared to council ships, barely 300 meters long. "Activate hostile scenario." Thousands of small projectiles were launched at the Sentinel from different directions. To the council, it looked like certain destruction. Then the Sentinel's point defense systems came online. The ship seemed to disappear behind a wall of tungsten projectiles, each one precisely calculated to intercept incoming threats. Not a single projectile reached the hull. "How many projectiles can it track simultaneously?" the speaker asked, his voice quieter now. 50,000, said casually, "give or take." That's not possible with your level of computing technology." "You're right," agreed. "It wouldn't be possible with the computing technology you scanned. That was commercial equipment. This is military grade." Brought up the final demonstration. "Now, this is something we use for mining, breaking up large asteroids for easier processing. We call it a mining charge." A single missile launched from a human ship. It looked small, insignificant. It approached a kilometer-wide asteroid and detonated. The asteroid didn't break apart. It vaporized. One moment it was there, the next it was a cloud of rapidly dispersing gas. "What was that?" the speaker demanded. "Antimatter," said simply. "A very small amount. This was about 0.01 grams, enough to vaporize a kilometer of rock." "You weaponized antimatter," the blue-furred council member sounded horrified. That's "efficient," suggested. "That wasn't even a weapon. That was a mining tool. Our actual antimatter weapons are significantly more powerful." The speaker's eyes turned to look at Earth's moon, visible in the distance. "Your moon. We detected unusual readings. What is it?" And exchanged glances. Finally spoke. "It's hollow. We converted it into a defensive platform about 80 years ago. Mars has similar installations. The asteroid belt has 347 hidden facilities that we use for ship construction and weapon manufacturing." "Why?" the speaker asked. "Who are you preparing to fight?" "Anyone who threatens us," said. "Or no one. We learned a long time ago that the best way to avoid war is to be too dangerous to attack. We weren't preparing for you specifically. We were preparing for the possibility that when we met other species, they might not be friendly. You've built your entire civilization around the assumption of hostility," the blue-furred being said. "No," corrected. "We built our civilization around the assumption that we need to be able to defend it. There's a difference. We hope for peace. We prepare for war. It's kept us alive this long." The council members were silent. Finally, the speaker spoke, his voice different now. Less commanding, more uncertain. We need to reconsider our approach. The Council will reconvene to discuss this new information. You will be contacted. As the humans prepared to leave, the speaker stopped them. Ambassador, when you laughed at our first meeting, it was not because you thought we were weak, was it? No, said honestly. We laughed because you thought we were the ones who needed protection. It was the surprise, not mockery. We understand now, the speaker said quietly. We will speak again soon. Back on Earth, Admiral reviewed the footage of the demonstration. Beside him, Sora watched with a satisfied expression. Think they got the message? She asked. Oh, they got it, said. The question is, what will they do about it? The answer came 3 days later. The council chamber was different this time. The platforms were arranged in a circle rather than looking down at the humans. When Ambassador entered with historian Minyu and biologist, the 12 council species were already waiting. The atmosphere had changed completely from their first meeting. The speaker stood, but there was no commanding presence in the gesture now. He seemed smaller somehow, less certain. Ambassador, thank you for returning. We have spent the last 3 days reviewing the demonstration. We have also had extensive discussions among ourselves. We would like to understand something. Of course, said. Your defensive systems, your weapons, your preparations. After reviewing our scans more carefully, we realized that these installations have been in place for decades, some for over a century. You began building these defenses before you even knew we existed, before you had met any other species. Why? Gestured to Minyu. This is Dr. Minyu. He's a historian who specializes in humanity's development. I think he can explain better than I can. Minyu stepped forward, pulling up a holographic display. An image of Earth appeared, rotating slowly. It looked peaceful from space, but Minyu's next images told a different story. Earth has experienced 6 major extinction events, Minyu began. The last one occurred 66 million years ago when an asteroid struck the planet. It wiped out 75% of all species. The one before that killed 96% of all marine life and 70% of land species. Earth doesn't just support life. It also tries to end it regularly. The images changed to show ice sheets covering most of the planet. This is Earth 20,000 years ago, an ice age that lasted over 100,000 years. Humans survived by adapting, moving, learning to use fire and create tools. We nearly went extinct. Our population dropped to less than 10,000 individuals. A council member, a being that looked like it was made of living crystal, spoke up. But you survived. We survived, Minyu confirmed. We always survive, not because we're the strongest or the biggest or the fastest. We survive because we adapt, we learn, we prepare. He brought up images of ancient human history, wars, plagues, famines, natural disasters. This is just the last 10,000 years, countless conflicts, diseases that killed half our population, volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun, earthquakes, tsunamis, floods. The speaker's eyes moved across the images. Your world is violent. Yes, Minyu said, and that violence shaped us. Every disaster taught us something. Every threat made us stronger. By the time we reached the space age, we had learned one critical lesson: prepare for the worst, hope for the best. Stepped forward next. Now let me explain why humans are the way we are biologically. May I scan one of you? The crystal being agreed, ran a medical scanner over it, displaying the results. Your physiology is fascinating. Efficient energy use, slow metabolism, long. You probably live 200 years or more. 240 on average, the being confirmed. Humans live about 90 years in ideal conditions, said. Less than half your, but we reach breeding age at around 15 years. You. 40 years. Nodded. So humans can have 3 generations in the time it takes you to have one. Now look at this. She brought up comparative biology data. Humans can survive in temperatures from -40 to +50 degrees. We can eat almost any organic matter. We can go without food for weeks, without water for days. We heal from injuries that would be fatal to most species. We can run for days without stopping, something almost no other predator on our world could do. The blue-furred council member leaned forward. Your persistence, hunters. We read about this. You chase prey until it dies from exhaustion. Exactly, said. We're not fast, we're not strong, but we don't stop, ever. That's what evolution gave us. The ability to just keep going no matter what. She pulled up one final image. A human brain compared to council species brains. And this is why we're dangerous. Our brains are wired for pattern recognition, tool use, and complex planning. We see threats that haven't happened yet. We prepare for dangers that might never come. It's not paranoia. It's survival instinct refined over millions of years. The speaker was quiet for a long moment. So when we told you to disarm, to stop preparing for threats, we were asking you to go against your fundamental nature. Yes, said gently. Humans who stop preparing die. That's been true for our entire history. We can't just turn that off because someone tells us the galaxy is safe. A younger council member spoke up for the first time. It was a four-armed being with copper-colored skin. What if the galaxy isn't safe? What if you're right to prepare? The chamber went silent. The speaker's eyes turned to the, "What are you saying?" The stood up. "I'm saying that maybe we're the ones who have been naive. We've had peace for 50,000 years because we've never met anyone who challenged us. But humanity has been preparing for hostile contact since before they even had. Maybe they know something we don't." "They're paranoid," the blue-furred being said. "Are they?" The gesture to the holographic displays still showing Earth's violent history. "Or have they simply experienced a reality that we've been fortunate enough to avoid?" The speaker made a sound like a long sigh. "There is something we have not told you, Ambassador. Something the Council has kept hidden for over 2,000 years." Felt a chill run down her spine. "What is it?" "Beyond our controlled space, there is a region we call the Dark Expanse. It's a volume of space about 50 light-years across. We discovered it 1,800 years ago when one of our colony ships disappeared there. We sent a military fleet to investigate. They disappeared too. We sent another fleet, better armed, with orders to proceed with extreme caution. They made it further, sent back some data, then vanished." "What did the data show?" Minyu asked. "Something lives there," the speaker said quietly. "Something that destroyed our ships. We've lost 7 exploration missions, 3 military fleets, and 2 colonies at the edge of the expanse. Each time we see the same thing. Our ships send back images of something moving in the dark, something huge, and then the transmission ends." "Why didn't you tell us this before?" asked. "Because we didn't want to frighten a young species with threats they couldn't handle. And because," the speaker hesitated, "because we don't know how to fight it. We've tried everything we have. Nothing works. So we sealed off that region of space and pretended it doesn't exist." The crystal being spoke up. "That's why we wanted to control you. Not just because you were dangerous. Because if you became aggressive, you might expand in that direction. Might attract attention we don't want attracted." Looked at Minyu and both of them had the same expression she knew was on her own face. Everything suddenly made sense. "You wanted to protect us," said slowly. "But you also wanted to keep us from discovering your secret. That somewhere out there is something you can't fight." "Yes," the speaker admitted. Fleet Commander's voice came over's communicator. She had left it open to the Situation Room on Earth. "Ambassador, request permission to speak." "Granted." "Council Speaker, this is Fleet Commander Nam of the Terran Space Defense. Did I understand correctly that you have a threat you can't neutralize?" "That is correct." "And rather than developing better weapons or asking for help, you sealed it off and hoped it would go away." There was a long pause. "When you say it like that, it sounds foolish." "It is foolish," said bluntly. "Problems don't go away because you ignore them. They get worse. This is basic strategy." "We are not warriors," the speaker said. "We have never needed to be. We don't think like you do." "No," agreed. "But maybe it's time you learned, or at least maybe it's time you let us help." The spoke again. "That's what I was thinking. Humans prepare for threats. They build weapons and defenses as naturally as we build art. Maybe that's not a flaw. Maybe that's exactly what the galaxy needs." The speaker looked at each of the council members in turn, then back at the humans. "You would help us, even after we threatened you." "That's what neighbors do," said simply. "They help each other, but we do it as equals, not as servants. You share what you know, we share what we know, and together we figure out how to keep everyone safe." The speaker was quiet for a moment. "The council will need to vote, but I believe we have much to discuss about a new arrangement, one based on partnership rather than protection." As the humans prepared to leave, they approached them. "Thank you for not being what we expected." "What did you expect?" asked. "Monsters," they said honestly. "Beings so violent and aggressive that they had to be contained. Instead, we found people who are ready to help defend strangers who threaten them. It's humbling." "We're not saints," Minyu said. "We can be monsters when we need to be, but we choose not to be unless forced. That's the difference." The touched Minyu's shoulder with one of its 4 hands. "I hope we can learn that choice from you." The vote took 3 days. The Galactic Council, an organization that had operated unchanged for 50,000 years, was about to do something it had never done before: admit it needed help. More than that, admit it needed help from a species it had initially tried to subjugate. President Sung stood before the joint session of the Terran Coalition and the Galactic Council, being broadcast to both Earth and the Council worlds. It was the first time in history that such a connection had been made. Billions of beings across dozens of worlds watched as humanity's leader spoke. "The Council has offered us a partnership," said, his voice calm and clear. "They've asked us to help them face a threat they don't understand. Many of you might think we should refuse. They came to us with demands and threats. They wanted to control us. Why should we help them?" He paused, looking directly into the camera. "We should help them because that's what civilized beings do. We should help them because the threat they face might eventually threaten us too. But most importantly, we should help them because they had the courage to admit they were wrong. That takes strength. That deserves respect." "However," continued, "humanity will not be anyone's guard dogs. We will not fight battles for species unwilling to defend themselves. This partnership means we teach each other. They teach us their knowledge, accumulated over thousands of years. We teach them what we've learned about survival and defense. Together, we become stronger than either of us could be alone." The speaker spoke next, his holographic image appearing beside. "The Council accepts these terms. We have been content in our peace for too long. We forgot that peace must sometimes be defended. Humanity will teach us to defend it. In return, we offer our friendship, our resources, and our commitment to true partnership." 6 months later, the combined fleet gathered at the edge of Council space, as close to the dark expanse as anyone had dared venture in 500 years. The flagship was human-designed, a massive vessel called the Indomitable. Captain stood on its bridge, but his crew was unlike any in history. Beside him, a named served as first officer. At Tactical, Sorabe worked with a named Tar. Engineering was a collaboration between human engineer Ryu and 3 Council species engineers. The ship itself was a hybrid, combining Council materials and energy systems with human weapons and defensive designs. "All ships reporting ready," said, her 4 arms moving across multiple control panels simultaneously. Looked at the... Behind the Indomitable, 50 ships waited, 20 human vessels, 30 from various Council species. It was not a large fleet by either civilization's standards, but it was designed for exploration and, if necessary, combat. "Any final readings on the expanse?" asked. Doctor, who had transferred to the Indomitable as Chief Science Officer, studied her displays. Nothing on sensors. Whatever is in there, it doesn't give off emissions we can detect from this distance. We'll have to go in to learn more. In the training bay, Security Officer Sora Bay finished her daily session. She had spent the last 6 months teaching Council species soldiers something they had never needed before: combat tactics. It had been challenging. Most of them had never held a weapon. Violence was foreign to their nature. But they learned. Slowly, carefully, they learned. Not because they wanted to hurt anyone, but because they understood now that sometimes peaceful beings needed to know how to fight to protect that peace. Better, Sora told a young soldier who had just completed a hand-to-hand combat drill. Remember, the goal isn't to beat your opponent. It's to neutralize the threat and survive. There's no honor in dying when you could have lived to protect others. The nodded, understanding. It's strange. A month ago, the idea of fighting horrified me. Now I see it as just another tool, unpleasant but necessary. That's the right mindset, Sora said. Violence should never be easy, but it should be possible when needed. In the main conference room, Ambassador met with the council representatives who had joined the mission. The delegate's brother expressed concerns that many back home shared. There are those who say we're becoming too much like humans, said, that we're losing our peaceful nature by learning to fight. Considered her words carefully. Can I ask you something? Before you knew about the Dark Expanse threat, how did you feel about conflict? It was unthinkable, wrong in every way. And now? Was quiet for a moment. Now I see it as a last resort, something to avoid but not impossible. Does that mean I've lost something? No, said firmly. It means you've gained wisdom. Peace is precious, worth fighting for, ironically. You haven't become violent, you've become complete. You now understand both peace and the cost of maintaining it. The blue-furred council member, whose name was, spoke up. Humans have taught us much in 6 months, not just about weapons and tactics, about resilience, about adapting to circumstances, about preparing for possibilities we hope never occur. And you've taught us patience, replied. Your long view of history, your diplomatic approaches, your material science has revolutionized our ship designs. This isn't one side teaching the other. It's both sides becoming better. The day of entry into the Dark Expanse arrived. Captain sat in his command chair, Fleet Commander Nam appearing on the communication screen from his ship, the Defender. All ships are ready, reported. Whatever is in there, we'll face it together. Agreed. Begin entry in 3, 2, 1, mark. The fleet moved forward, crossing the boundary into the expanse. For the first few hours, nothing happened. Space looked the same. Sensors read normal. It was almost disappointing. Then Doctor called out from her station. Captain, I'm picking up something. It's big, really big. Distance, approximately 50 million kilometers. On screen. The shifted to show long-range sensor data. At first, it was just a shape. Then the computer enhanced the image and the bridge went silent. The thing was massive, easily 10 times the size of the largest ship in their fleet. It didn't look natural. Geometric patterns covered its surface, and it was moving. Is it a ship? Asked. Unknown, said. It's not giving off any emissions I recognize. No heat signature, no radiation, it's just there. Made a decision. Open a channel, all frequencies. Channel open, the communications officer confirmed. Unknown vessel, this is Captain of the Joint Council Human Fleet. We come in peace. We wish to establish communication. They waited, seconds turned to minutes. Then a response came, not in words, in images. The filled with pictures, council ships being destroyed, colonies burning, beings screaming in terror. It's showing us what it did to the council missions, Tar said, his voice hollow. Then new images appeared. Human ships, Earth. But these images were questions, not statements. The thing was asking what these new vessels were. It's intelligent, said, and it remembers the council. It's asking about us because we're different. Thought fast. Can we send images back? Yes, but what do we send? The Truth turned to his crew. Compile everything, council history, human history, show it peace and war, cooperation and conflict. Show it that we're here together. The data package was assembled and transmitted. They waited again. This time the response was faster. The entity transmitted a single image, the combined fleet with a question mark. It wants to know why we're together, said. Council species and humans. Voice came over the communication from her position in the diplomatic suite. Send this, because we chose to be. The image was transmitted. Another long pause. Then the massive entity did something unexpected. It moved away, not aggressively, not in fear. It simply backed off, creating distance. Studied her readings. It's leaving, moving deeper into the expanse. Why? Asked. I think, looked up from her console. I think it saw something it didn't expect. The council couldn't fight it, so it hunted them. But we're different. We're ready to fight, but we're choosing to communicate. It doesn't know what to make of us. His voice came over the communication. So it's not hostile, it's territorial. Maybe, said, or maybe it's been alone so long that it forgot other ways to interact. The council ships probably ran or fought. We're doing neither, we're just talking. Over the next several weeks, the fleet established a kind of communication with the entity. Not words, but concepts. The entity began to understand that the fleet was there to explore, not to conquer or threaten. In return, it showed them things. Ancient ruins of civilizations that had existed before the Council. Technology beyond anything either humanity or the Council had seen. The entity, they eventually understood, was old. Incredibly old. Perhaps the last survivor of a civilization that had died millions of years ago. It had been protecting this region of space because it was the tomb of its people. The Council missions had felt like grave robbers. Captain made a proposal, mutual respect of territory. The expanse would remain off-limits except for carefully planned diplomatic missions. In exchange, the entity would share knowledge with the combined fleet, teaching them about the deep history of the galaxy. The entity agreed. When the fleet returned to Council space, they brought back more than just success. They brought back proof that different species, different approaches, different ways of thinking could work together to solve problems that seemed impossible alone. Ambassador recorded a final message, to be broadcast across both human and Council space. When we first met the Council, we laughed, not because we thought they were weak, but because the situation was so absurd. They thought we needed protection. We thought they needed a reality check. Both of us were wrong. We needed each other. The galaxy is bigger and stranger than either of us imagined. There are threats out there, yes, but there are also wonders, and the best way to face both is together, as partners who respect each other's strengths and understand each other's weaknesses. Humanity isn't laughing anymore. We're learning, we're teaching, we're growing, and we're doing it alongside friends who used to be strangers who thought they were our masters. That's the real victory here. Not that we showed them our weapons, but that we showed them our willingness to use those weapons to defend them, even after they threatened us. And they showed us that changing your mind when presented with new information isn't weakness. It's wisdom. Back on Earth, Admiral watched the message with Tactical Officer Sora beside him. Think it'll last? Sora asked. The partnership, I mean. Smiled. I think we've both learned that peace isn't something that just exists. It's something you build and maintain. And now we're building it together. That's stronger than either of us could create alone. The Indomitable remained in service as the flagship of the joint fleet, patrolling the borders, exploring new regions, and serving as a symbol of what was possible when different beings chose cooperation over conflict. Its crew, a mix of human and Council species, became the model for a new kind of civilization, one that remembered both peace and war, that prepared for threats while hopping for friendship. Humanity had entered the galactic stage with laughter. They were staying with purpose, and the galaxy would never be quite the same.